Question 19. So this question is under your investment appraisal, that is section B. What are we going to cover in this question? Let us go to the requirements. So 16 marks is for SS showing all relevant calculations whether Furlion company should proceed with the significant opportunity. Discuss the assumptions made and other factors which will affect the decision of whether to establish a plan in NASWA. Black-Scholes pricing model may be used where appropriate. Right? So this has tons of requirements in one requirement. First, we have to say whether the company should proceed with the opportunity. That means whether they should go with the investment or not. Okay. So, should proceed with significant opportunity. This is your first requirement. Second is discuss assumptions and other factors which will affect the decision of whether to establish a plant. And wherever you see it is appropriate, Black-Scholes option pricing model can be used. Coming to B, explain what is meant by an options row and discuss the impact of changes in interest rates on the appraisal of the investment. So you have to talk about this. This is one of the Greek. Remember the 5 Greeks in options? We have theta, we have rho, we have vega, we have delta, and we have one more is there. There are 5 gamma. So rho is one of the Greeks. Okay, what does rho means? Rho has to do with interest rate. Okay, when interest rate changes, option value will change. So how this is going to have an impact on the appraisal of the investment? Changes in interest rates. Part C. Discuss the possibility of Nasman government obtaining funding for further land reclamation from the World Bank, referring specifically to the International Development Association as for 4 marks. Right? This is a theory and this is from your section A of the syllabus. The role of the senior financial advisor. So if you want to know how to write this theory part, you have to get to your part A. Section A of your syllabus. So starting with part A, first let us read the case study. You can see the case study is very small, it's not so big. So we can quickly finish this reading part. Furlion company. And one thing you have to note is how much time you are taking to read and understand a case study. You have to time yourself and see how fast are you reading your requirements and then your reading. So because it's not just how much you write for that allocated time, it is also how fast you read. So you have to work on your reading skills as well. How do you improve your reading skill? How do you make yourself read faster but also understand and retain the information? For that you have to practice reading. You might read other stuff, you might read other books. I'm not telling you 24/7 read AFM textbook only. I'm not saying you that. You can read so many other things. You can read journals, you can read novels, you can read books also. Right now, this is an advantage for those people who have a habit of reading. A person who reads all the time, not just the study for the study purpose, just reading books or anything, they are very good in reading fast. So they're saving time, right? Another area where you can save time is in your reading. If you read fast and understand things, you are saving time. You are having more time to write. Okay, so now on that note, let us start. Furlion company manufactures heavy agricultural equipment and machinery which can be used in difficult farming conditions. Furlion company's chief executive has been investigating a significant opportunity in the country of Naswa where Furlion has not previously sold any products. Okay, one thing you have to note here, because there was one requirement whether you have to invest in country of Naswa or not, you have to talk about other factors as well. So this could be one of the factors. They have previously not sold any products in Naswa. And the government of Naswa has been undertaking a major land reclamation program and Furlion's equipment is particularly suitable for use on the reclaimed land. So his equipment is particularly suitable for the use on the reclaimed land. We saw that this was the last requirement. Because of the cost and the other problems involved in transporting his products, Furlion's chief executive proposes that Furlion should establish a plan for manufacturing machinery in Naswa. He knows that the Naswan government is keen to encourage the development of sustainable business within the country. So it is about sustainable business they are promoting. Coming to the second paragraph, initial calculations suggest that the proposed investment, okay, initial calculation suggests that the proposed investment in NASMA would have a negative net present value of 1.01 million. Okay, so this question says that you have a negative net present value. But still, you have to show relevant calculations and say whether it is worthwhile for you to invest in NASMA or not. Okay, however, Furlion's chief executive believes that there may be opportunities for greater cash inflows. So this is the reason why they want to invest. They believe that there's a greater opportunity for greater cash flows in future if Naswan government expands its land reclamation program. So one reason is opportunities for greater cash flows. The government at present is struggling to fund expansion of the program out of its own resource and is looking for other funding. If Naswan government obtains this funding, the chief executive has focused on the increased demand for Furlion's products which justify 15 million additional expenditure at the site of factory in 3 years' time. Okay, because they are saying that because there will increase demand in the future, so because of that additional expenditure 15 million is justified for 3 years' time. Okay, the expected net present value for this expansion is currently estimated to be zero. Coming to the third para, it can be assumed that all costs and revenues include inflation. The relevant cost of capital is 12%. The risk free is 4%. Chief executive has estimated that the likely volatility of cash flows at a standard deviation at 30%. Standard deviation is 30%. Okay. So you can see that we are having all the 5 elements of what? To calculate our Black-Scholes option pricing model, to use it. And the last paragraph, one of the Furlion's non-executive data has read about possible changes in interest rates and warned us how this might affect the investment appraisal. So coming to the first one, whether we should proceed with the significant opportunity. Let us see. So you are starting with black option pricing model. That means our net present value is negative, but that does not mean that we should not go with the project. Our option, there is a real option. If you can see in the question and identify that there's a real option they were talking about, that option has a value, so that option will give it a value. So how will you value that option? Using Black-Scholes option pricing model, because in the question they have referred that wherever you find it possible, apply Black-Scholes option pricing model. So you don't have to think twice. What do you have to do? You know that you have to use black option pricing model. So first is value of an option to expand. So there is an option to expand. This is a real option. They have been talking about expand, expand, expand. They told that to expand, there's some additional cost for that. Because they believe that there will be demand in future. So they want to expand. That is known as option to expand. This is the nature of the question you can expect in your question. They will never give you a clear cut that this is a real option, this is an option to expand. From the wordings, the sentences they are using, you have to understand that this is a real option and option to expand. Now, you have been given all the 5 variables. So, first put all the 5 variables in one place. Volatility standard deviation was 30%. Okay. What is the current price? We need exercise price, we need current price. That exercise price is the capital expenditure, which is 15 million. And how do you find the current price? Value of project including option exercise price. Okay. So 15 million, you need to discount it. You need to discount it. How are you going to discount? Now, how did you get the 0.712? That 15 million is capital expenditure, additional expenditure, right? In 3 years' time, they have told. And they have given it that cost of capital. That cost of capital is given to you to discount. Current value means you have to know the value of today. So the cost of capital was 12% and in 3 years' time. So you have to discount back to year 0. So it will be this. This is how you are getting 0.712. Okay. Multiply by 50. So this is your current value. Now coming to exercise date, they have told in 3 years time, so it's 3 years. Risk-free rate they have given us 4%. So we have all the 5 components. Now what's next? Right? Find D1, D2, and D1 and D2. Okay. So first find D1. We all know the formula. Write the formula down. Okay. I'm not writing the formula here, but you must know the formula and copy paste it and then put figures. So it is PA. Your PA is this current price over your exercise price. Okay, logarithm of that plus risk-free rate 4% plus it is 0.5 only. It is fixed 0.5 into 0.5 into your standard deviation squared into T, that is number of years, 3 years. Okay, divided by your standard deviation into square root of T for 3 years. And if you see your D1 is in negative, what does it mean? If your D1 is in negative, whatever figure you get from that table, okay, you have to minus that figure by 0.5. 0.5 minus that figure. Because in the table you will not get a figure for minus 0.163. You have to find a figure for positive 0.163. Okay, when you find for D1, you have to round this up to 2 decimal places. I have told you that whenever you have to find value for ND1, you have to find for 2 decimal places because the table itself allows only for 2 decimal places. You cannot find for 3 decimal places. So round up to 0.16. You have to find the value for this, right? And the value for this from the table is here. This one. That's why 0.5 minus that value. So this is the table for ND1. Now let's come into D2. D2 we know it is D1 minus standard deviation into square root of time. So this is D1. This is your standard deviation into square root of time, which is 3 years. This is also negative. Same for ND2, 0.5 minus the figure. You have to find for 0.68 from the table. And this is the value you are getting. Okay. Now value for call option. You have to understand that this is a call option or a put option. We know it's a real option, but real call option or put option. Option to expand is a call option. So that means we have to find the value for call option. Right? So the formula is this. Now we are putting numbers. PA into ND1 is this. Minus 15 exercise price into ND2 and this one. That's fixed. Power minus R into 2. R is 4% and T is 3 years. Now if you find, so this is the value for option. Now overall value, what was our net present value? It was negative 1.01. So we are deducting that net present value from this value and this is the overall value. It is in positive. So what should we tell? Based on this, we have to write one statement. Just calculating overall value is not enough. What does it mean? You have to say in words. So the investment has a positive net present value, so should be accepted on those grounds. This line has to be there. Whether you should accept or not, you have to accept. Why? Because the investment has a positive net present value. So they are saying on this ground you have to accept. Furlion should also consider the value of an abundant option if results turns out to be worse than expected, or a delay option if it wants to see how the reclamation program is going to continue. Right? Okay. This paragraph, what does it mean? Okay, so this is an option to expand. Okay, we put a value also which is 0.35, which is 1.36. Okay, so now it is equally important for you to find a value for abundant option. We know there's an abundant option. This is also a real option. Abundant option is a put option. Okay, we need to find a value for abundant option. Why? Because this option to expand, we are calculating based on some assumptions. What is that assumption? Assumption is that our cash flows will increase, there will be demand. But what if it does not happen? What if the actual result is worse than your prediction? So in that case, you have to be prepared. So you have to value your abandon option also. That means you are going to abandon it. You're not going further with that. What is the value for that? Right? So those also has to consider, and also an option to delay. Option to delay is also another real option. So abandonment option and option to delay. You have to find a value for either abandonment option or option to delay. Maybe you can delay till what? Till you see how the reclamation program is going to continue. Okay. Now, put this in subheading. Whenever you're answering a different requirement in one requirement, you have to put subheadings to separate it. So here we have to talk about assumption, means, and other factors that the requirement asked us. Okay. So this is a quite a lengthy answer, as you can see, but in your real exam, when you're writing, you should not write so much. This is for your explanation purpose, for you to understand, because you will not be able to write also so much. But main assumptions and factors you can write. Now, using real options for decision making has limitations. Okay, so now this is a theory question, right? A student of mine asked me, how do I write theory part? Okay, how do you know? Okay, for that also I will make a separate video in detail where I will only have theory questions. Okay, but for now, this is also a theory question, right? You have to write theories for assumptions and other factors. So how do you start? So what was this topic about? Mainly, first know what is the topic. The main topic is real options here. Real option. Okay, I'm writing it in the side way. So number one is real option. Since this is a question whether you have to invest or not, that means you have to know about its advantages and disadvantages, right? So you here they have asked, they have started with limitations, right? You have to start with limitations. Why? Because based on the above, the value which we calculated, that option value we calculated, we got a positive value. So already we got one positive thing of real option, right? It is giving a value. So you don't have to write advantages of real option here again. You can directly start with the limitations. So real option limitations. Because the value which you calculated based on which you have taken decision is real option advantages. Value for the real option. Now you have to start with the limitations. You also have to start with the limitations of real option. Okay. So basically you are saying, hold down. There are limitations of real option also. Okay. So that's how you get your first sentence, first line. Using real options for decision making. What are we using the real options for? For what? Decision making. So using real options for decision making has limitations. You write that sentence. Now you say what are the limitations. So you build up on that point. The first point, remember the main point what you have to say, you always write in the beginning of your paragraph. Now, rest all the sentences which you write, you're building up on that point. You're explaining that point in depth, in detail. That's how this is coming in lengthy answers. All the lines are made up like that. From first point to the next point, from next point to the third point. You should know how to jump, how to write. Right? Here is where your skill is very important. How you write matters a lot. So the second, real options are built around, the first line, okay? Real options are built around uncertainty surrounding future cash flows. But real option theory is only useful if management can respond effectively to uncertainties as they evolve. Okay? So this whole line, they're talking that real option is built around what? Uncertainties surrounding future cash flows. But real option theory is only useful if management can respond effectively to these uncertainties as they evolve. Okay, it is correct that you are building around uncertainties, but how will it be useful or effective? Only if they can respond to those uncertainties the time those uncertainties are evolving. Okay, second, what is your second point you have to talk about? Since you mentioned about real option, how real option is valued? How real option is valued? What is the second point? Second point you have to talk about Black-Scholes model. This is only in the first paragraph itself, okay? How to build up on your theory parts to write theory answers. Black-Scholes model. Okay. I'm putting an arrow also for you to show that from real option limitations you are going to Black-Scholes model. Why? Know your why also. The reason you are going for Black-Scholes is because real option, how is it valued? Based on Black-Scholes model. And Black-Scholes model is very easy for you to give disadvantages. We have studied those advantages and disadvantages. We have tons of it. So it's very easy for you to come up to points now. Now, coming to this, the Black-Scholes model for valuing real option has a number of assumptions which may not be true in practice. Number of assumptions. Not true in practice. Okay, Black-Scholes model. We know that Black-Scholes model is also built in number of assumptions which is not true. So write that sentence. There is no harm in writing you that sentence. Okay, so you directly don't jump. Black-Scholes model is this limitation. First, write this sentence that it is based on number of assumptions. When you write this sentence that a model is based on number of assumptions, then we know that you cannot totally rely on that because those assumptions can be wrong. But you have to write that sentence first. Before stating what are the assumptions, write that it is based on number of assumptions, which is not true in practice. Now you start talking about your 5 variables. What were your 5 variables in your Black-Scholes model? Real interest rate, volatility, which was your standard deviation, time, then comes your exercise price and your current price. But mostly it is about interest rate and standard deviation. Mostly because those are the assumptions, those are the rates which changes. Okay, standard deviation and interest rate. So about those things, those two things you can talk. So those are the 2 points. So now are you getting an extra point? Okay, so that is your third point. From Black-Scholes option pricing model, you are going to what? Elements of Black-Scholes. Elements of Black-Scholes. Elements of Black-Scholes, I'm writing B. What are those elements? Okay, I'm writing here. Mostly it is STD, standard deviation, and interest rate. Because these are the two rates which changes, but we assume it does not change. When we valued this Black-Scholes model, when we put interest rate, we assumed interest rate was 4%, we assumed standard deviation was 30%. But in reality, is it fixed? Is it known? It is not known in advance and it is not fixed. We know it changes. Okay? We are not talking about the other three. Current price, exercise price, and time. Okay, we are only talking about standard deviation interest rates. So that gives you third point to talk about. Okay, it assumes that there is a market for the underlying asset. We assume that there's a market. So this is one of the assumption. Market for underlying asset. This has always been repeated in Black-Scholes option pricing model. Okay, so this is one of the assumption that there's a market for underlying asset and the volatility of returns on the underlying asset follows a normal distribution. The standard deviation follows a normal distribution. This is another assumption. The model also assumes perfect market. Third assumption. But is the market perfect? Is the market perfect? And a constant risk-free rate and constant volatility. See, assumption on assumptions you are getting. Once you know how to start, how to go from each step, you can build up your answers in a systematic way. There will be an order in your answer. It will make sense when you read to yourself also your answer. It should make sense to you first. Then only it can make sense to the readers, right? Read your answers. Always read your answers. Don't just write. Okay, hold down. Read your sentences to yourself and see, are you satisfied with those answers? Are you understanding? Now coming to the second paragraph. So all this was about first paragraph. When you come into the second paragraph, it is not about the assumptions. It is about other factors. You see how they are building up on different paragraphs now. So first paragraph was only about assumptions made. We started with real options. From there we jumped to Black-Scholes model. From there we jumped to the elements of Black-Scholes model. Right? Next. Now we are going to the second paragraph where we are talking about other factors. So assumption part is over. Other factors, this other factors could be four factors, there could be three factors, five factors. If there are three factors, let's say for example, then you have to explain your point in three separate paragraphs. If it's five, then five separate paragraphs based on the number of factors you have. So here I can see, let me see how many paragraphs. One, two, three, four. Okay, this is one paragraph, the last one. The reason it is separated because it came in the different page, that's why. So one, two, three, four, four. So there are four paragraphs. Okay, one, two, three, and this is fourth. That separation is there because it came in a different page. Otherwise, it's one paragraph only. So one, two, three, four. That means there are four factors. Okay, we'll see what are those factors. First, know your main factors. Whenever you have to answer theory part, know what is your main point you're talking about. Once you know that main factors, based on that, what are the areas I can talk about based on that topic? So this is how you get your sentences. This is how you get your points to answer. Build up on your points. Okay. Now, first point. First, Furlion, mention about the company. Don't just say they will, or it is, they, he, she. Write the name of the company because you are referring to the company. Okay, so Furlan company will also consider expectations about the future of the, what are we here to? Why are we talking these other factors? These other factors are, we are evaluating whether we have to invest or not. Where? In NASVA. So, when we are talking about NASVA, let's see. Furlan will also consider expectation about future of the land reclamation program. Future of land reclamation program. Where are we investing? We are investing in NASVA. So we need to talk about NASVA government. Should we or not? That's how you're getting your first point. Other factors. Number one. First factor. Land reclamation, comma, NASVAN government. NASVAN government. We need to mention about NASVAN government when we are talking about another country. See, whenever you have to invest in a different country, you have to talk about their government and their policies because they are going to have an impact on your project in that country. You have to talk about currency risk. You have to talk about that government, the tax they are putting, the subsidies that you are going to receive, the loan, all these things you have to talk about. This is an international investment. So now we'll see how they have built it. Has the program been as quick and as effective as the Norman government originally expected? See, it's a question mark. Furlan will also want to consider how the program will be effective. Now see, they're just using different sentences, but they are talking about the same point only, the land reclamation. So in one paragraph, you're only talking about one point only. You're not talking about two, 3 points together. So the main thing is about land reclamation. Even the second sentence is that Furlan company will also want to consider how the program will be affected by the amount of funding the government obtains and any conditions attached to that funding, right? Funding of the government and conditions attached. You need to talk about because we saw that the government was not able to fund it. From the case study, you are taking these points, right? So, company, Furlan will want to consider. Who wants to consider? Me or you? It is the company. Furlan company wants to consider this. So that is the first thing. Now coming to the second factor. What is the second factor? Furlan may also wish. See, everywhere in every paragraph they are talking about the mentioning the company. You have to mention the name of the company every time in all your answers, in all your paragraphs, in whatever sentences you are writing. Okay. So second is, Furlan may also wish to consider whether its investment of this type will be looked on favorably by the Nazwan government and whether tax or other concessions will be available. So will it be looked favorably by the government? Whether tax or other concessions will be available? Whatever you can think, whatever the factors you as a company will consider when you go for an international investment, those are the points you have to write for this company as well. What will you go? What will you think about, or what will you consider when you have to invest in a different country? Think like this, you will come up with points. Automatically, you will come up with points. You will think about tax, you will think about the benefit. Whether are you receiving any preferential treatment from the government, any subsidies or grants, right? Or whether your investment will be looked favorably by the government, because we have been told in the case study the government is promoting, Nasban government is promoting which type of investment? Sustainable investment. I will take you to the case study. Let me take you to the case study. See, first paragraph, last line. Nasman government is keen to encourage development of sustainable business within the country. So you have to also see whether your business, your investment in that country, is it seen as a sustainable business or not? Because government is going to develop those. Okay. So this may come with conditions. Given the government's commitment to a sustainable economy, such as the way production facilities operate or other treatment of employees, how you treat your employees, what are the production facilities. Okay, whenever I say you, please think of the company. You means I'm referring to the company only. I'm telling you for you to understand it better, right? Rather than me saying company, company, company. Right? Of course, there will be some conditions to that. Okay, whatever investment you're going to do, there will be conditions, because government is keen for the sustainable. If your one is not sustainable, you are going to have some conditions to that. Right? Now coming to the third point. So the second point, what was it about? Tax, other favorable what? Treatment, whether investment is sustainable. Now coming to the third point, which is in the third paragraph. Just 3 lines, right? 2 sentence, 3 lines. Given that this is a market which may expand in the future, Furlion should also consider the reaction of competitors. So reaction of competitors is the important point, because we told that they will expand in the future. So competitors will react to it. We all know that when the market is growing, there's a growth for that sector, competitors will follow, right? They will not keep quiet. So this may be a market where establishing a significant presence quickly may provide a significant barrier if competitors try to enter the market later. All these points you can write on, you can build up on. It's easy. What happens when competitors react? So this could be a significant barrier for you if you are having a presence in that market very quickly. So third one is reaction of competitors. Whenever you have to set up in any industry, competitor, you cannot forget about competitor. Coming to the fourth point, the last point, right? I know this sounds very easy. When you read also, you must be thinking that I'm wasting time. Why am I not going ahead? There is a reason why. Because numbers and all, it is same. It is fixed. We know that if we don't get this number, we are wrong somewhere. So we try to work on and we ultimately get that answer. But in theory part, the difficulty arose because every individual will be having different answers. But that does not mean that they are wrong. So how do we know when we assess? Most of you are doing self-study. How do you know whether we are correct or not? It's hard, right? In theory, numbers is fixed. We know it is correct or not. There is a yes or a no. Theory, there is no such thing like that. So when you write also, it is very hard for you to start how to build up any answers. What are the exact points I need to cover? How do I know what I'm writing is making sense also or not? Or am I going the correct track? That's the reason I'm spending more time here now. Because I have got this request from students, from people who are watching my videos. They told me that please tell me how to write the theory part and all. So that's why I'm spending more time and all and giving you the hint. Because I have followed all these techniques myself, I got the results, right? I got a very positive result. And I want you also to pass this. If you pass this in first attempt, it will be a great success for me. Trust me on that. So coming to the fourth point, as the investment is for the manufacture of specialized equipment, Okay, it is possible that there is insufficient skilled labor in the local labor pool in Nazwa. What about labor? Okay, this is a manufacturer of skill equipment, specialized equipment. Have we been mentioned about it anywhere in the case study? Let us go. Okay, definitely in the first paragraph only. Okay, manufactures heavy agricultural equipment and machinery which can be used in difficult farming conditions. This means it is specialized only. This cannot be used in everyday or any other work. It is only used in difficult farming conditions, right? So what does it mean? Insufficient skilled labor. You have to talk about labor. So the fourth point is about labor, staff skill. Okay, whether they have the staff skill or not, staff is skilled enough to do that or not. Okay, as well as training local labor, supervision is likely to be required. You have to train those local labor. It is required at least initially from staff based in other countries. This may involve cultural issues such as different working practice. Second is cultural issues. Based on that, we are talking about cultural issues because the staff in two different countries, they might have different working conditions, they might have different ethics, norms, values, expectations. It might differ, and because of the differences, when you work together, right, in the same place, it becomes very difficult to communicate also. So next is cultural issues. This is how you build from one point to next. Basically, you have to be expert in this one. So that's it for this first requirement, right? Now I will take you to the marking scheme and show you how it is marked. Only your part A, only look at part A. Forget about the rest. Part A, 1 mark for PA, for calculating that PA. Remember, we used a discount factor, discounted, multiplied that by 15 million. For that whole thing, 1 mark. Other variables, 1 mark. You see other variables, that means you have to get all the variables right to get that 1 mark. Even if you're getting one variable wrong, you're not getting 1 mark. That means your interest rate has to be correct, your standard deviation has to be correct, right? Your exercise price has to be correct, and also your exercise interest rate and time. So this four variables has to be right, and 1 mark. Why is it only 1 mark? And why PA, that current price is 1 mark? Why is it separated? The reason is you have to do a working here. Working is required. Wherever working is required, you are given additional, you are given separate marks for that, right? So that PA is 1 mark because you have a working there. But what about the other variables? PE or exercise price, time, standard deviation, interest rate. Only 1 mark. You don't require any working there. Directly from the questions you are picking up. That's why it's just 1 mark. The other four variables. Okay. Coming to the calculation of D1 and D2. 3 marks. 3 marks. Okay. Maybe 2 marks for D1 and 1 mark for D2. More marks for D1 because D1 has a lengthier equation to solve, right? Now coming to ND1 and ND2, just 2 marks. One for ND1, one for ND2. Coming to the value of option to expand decision itself is 1 mark, right? So that means to get up to that point where you get the correct value for an option, your previous steps has to be correct. That means your current price has to be correct. Exercise price correct. Interest rate has to be correct. Your D1, D2 has to be correct. ND1, ND2 has to be correct. Then only your value option will be correct. Otherwise, it will be wrong. So be very careful of every single step you are making, of every single number you are putting in each step is very crucial and is very important. So when you work also, check yourself from the beginning itself so that later you don't have to come and revisit. Later, trust me, you cannot change your figures. It will be too late. So from the beginning itself, you have to be very careful. You have to have a very good presence of mind. what you are doing, where you are at, for you not to make errors and simple mistakes and all, because nothing is simple mistake in the on the day of the exam. We all know that we need 50 to pass. So coming to the rest three part, you see it is more marks than the calculation itself. Revised value of projects and comment. What was the revised value of project? Revised value of project means you deduct your net present value and find that value and you comment on that. 3 marks. Assumptions, 3 marks. Factors, 3 marks. We saw that we discussed 4 factors here. And assumptions also maybe more than 3 or something we have. So this you see that you have to know assumptions. You have to know the other factors. It has maximum marks, right? Let me see whether I have the, no, I don't have that marking, the examiner's comment and all. So now coming to part B. Okay, part B is very small. Part B is just for I guess 5 marks. That why. Okay, let us go to the requirement B again. It was about RO. Okay, explain what is mean by options. So first you have to explain what is options row and discuss the impact. And this and word means there is another requirement. So that means 2 marks for explanation and 3 marks could be for discussing the impact of changes in interest rates on appraisal of the investment. So let us go to that. Right, that's why it's in 2 separate paragraphs. This is definition, this is impact. You are explaining the impact of changes in interest rate. Okay, so now this, what is the definition of it? From the textbook itself you can pick it up, or you can study from here itself. Sensitivity of valuation of the options to interest rate changes can be measured by the options row. So options row measures how sensitive, okay, the value of an option is to the interest rate. That means if interest rate changes, does your option also changes very rapidly and all? If the change is very massive, that means it's very sensitive. If the change is not so much, that means it's not so sensitive. This is like that price elasticity of demand and all. How elastic the price changes is to the demand. It's like that. So this is the two thing is, one is option, value of an option, the interest rate changes. Right, your x variable is interest rate change, y is value of an option. Now you are given an example, you have 2 marks for that. So just writing this one sentence is not enough, you will not get your full mark. The options row is the amount of change in the options value for a 1% change in the risk free interest rate. That means if your risk free interest rate changes by 1%, how much your option value is changing. Okay, third, this line also has to be there, I'm putting it in bracket. The row is possible for calls and so will be positive if the risk-free interest rate does increase. What does it mean? Okay, so that means you are saying if interest rate increases, row will be positive only. Why? Why row is positive for calls? Okay, go to call option. Call option is what? Right to buy, no? So row is what? Interest rate. So if interest rate increases, that means value of an option also increases. Value of an option will be positive. Why? Because if interest rate increases, okay, you will exercise the option because the option will be giving you a lower price, right? Because we have to protect ourselves from that increase in interest price, or that interest price in the market if it increases, right? You will exercise the option, you will exercise that option. This is a call option, so you will exercise the option means option has a value. That's why when row is positive for calls, okay, and so will be the positive if risk-free interest rate does increase. That means if risk-free interest rate increase, option will have a value. Now, coming to this, the impact. However, interest rate tend to move quite slowly and interest rate is often not a significant influence on the option's value. Right? This is not the significant impact on the option's value. You need to mention about it as well. And in the question, if you've seen the case study, interest rate is not moving, it's moving very slowly. So particularly for short-term options. Okay. However, many real options are longer term and will have a higher ROAS than short-term options. You need to mention about this as well, right? Real options are longer term in nature, right? Option to delay, you will not take 1 month option to delay or 1 month option to expand. If you take, let's say in this example, it was for 3 years, so you will take for a long term, right? So if you are taking for a longer term means what? Your ROAS will be higher than short term options. Why is it? The reason why long term options have higher ROAS than short term option is because in the long term interest rate will change. Interest rate changes slowly, right? But in the longer term there is more chances of interest rate changing. I'm not saying by small or big amount, that does not matter, but it will change. But in the short term, it's very unlikely that interest rate will change. If interest rate does not change, row also will not change, right? So that's why so the long term option will have higher rows. A change in interest rate will be more significant the longer the time until expiry of an option. This is another point. All these are from your textbook. There is no new piece of information here, nothing new which was not there or which has not been taught to you. Okay. A change in interest rates will be more significant, right? So that means, let's say you are taking a option for 3 years, right? You have 3 years until the expiry of an option. So your change in interest rate will be more significant that time. But if you're having a very less, you are very close towards that expiry. You just have 1 month for your options to get expire. Interest rate will not be so significant, the change in interest rate. Because that interest rate change cannot happen in 1 month. It will take interest rate takes time to change, right? Now coming to the last point, we have to talk how this is impacting on the investment appraisal. So in addition, right, this is also not a new paragraph, right? This in addition it's different because it was on a new page. In addition, there are possible indirect economic effects of interest rate changes, such as on the return demanded by finance providers and hence on the cost of capital. This you have to talk about because the ultimate question was what impact it will have on the investment appraisal. Investment appraisal means you can talk about the cost of capital and the return demanded by finance providers, right? So because of that interest rate changes, this can has an impact on the return which is demanded by the finance providers. The one if you're taking debt, right? And also cost of capital. Hence even cost of capital also. Why cost of capital? Why it is linked? Cost of capital has what? Cost of debt, right? Cost of capital is made up of cost of equity and cost of debt. Cost of debt is this only return demanded by finance provider. Cost of debt means interest rate changes plays a big role here. Because based on that interest rate, if higher interest rate means your higher tax will be saved. That means lower will be your cost of debt. That means cost of capital will reduce. But if your interest rate reduces, tax will not be saved so much. So your cost of debt will be higher, cost of capital also will be higher. Remember, your investment is discounted based on cost of capital. Higher cost of capital means what? Your net present value will be more towards, it will be less, net present value will be less. So your whole decision whether to invest or not is based on the net present value only. It will change only if cost of capital changes. Now you see how one element is linked to the other. Coming to part C. Part C is 4 marks. Now we'll see how part B was marked. You see 2 marks for explanation, 3 marks for impact of interest rate movements. Now coming to part C. Okay. C is what? It is 2 different paragraphs. 2 marks for this, 2 marks for this. You are getting 4 marks. What was part C requirement for? You see, I tend to forget the requirements, and so will you. So keep back referring to the requirements. Part C, discuss the possibility of the Nazwan government obtaining funding for further land reclamation from the World Bank. This is like you are taking more debt from the World Bank. You are requesting for the debt, right? referring specifically to the International Development Association. That means you have to refer to this in your answer. 4 marks. So basically, the question is asking discuss the possibility of the Naswan government obtaining funding for further land reclamation from the World Bank. So you have to say how possible it is for the Naswan government to obtain fund from World Bank. Is it possible? Is it not possible? How it is? How likely it is? Right? And also you have to refer to International Development Association. Now for this question and all, you need to think. You need to think a lot because right like this it will not come to your mind. The answer will not flash in your mind. This type of question is where you need to be more creative. You need to think outside the box because you need to think a lot. You have to link the answers from your case study. No calculations. Okay, so coming to the first paragraph, let's see what they have read. World Bank provide loans, often direct to governments on a commercial basis for capital projects. Loans are generally for a long-term period, which may suit the Nasman government. See how they have built up on the answer. They directly didn't say World Bank will provide loan to Nasman government. No, they started what was the role of World Bank. When you start your answer, you have to start like this. You have to say what is World Bank about, what does it provide, what is the role of World Bank. But in just one simple line, not paragraphs on paragraphs. See your marks, see your time. 4 marks only. So you only have to give one line, one brief line about the role of World Bank, and then you are linking it with the Naswan government. That's how you are starting. So first point for World Bank, role of World Bank. WB. Role of World Bank. There are plenty of roles of World Bank given in your textbook. Go through them. But what is the main is you have to pick from all those points what is the main, which is related to this case study. This case study is about taking loans from World Bank. So that is that is one of the main roles of WB, World Bank, that you have to mention about. You're not saying 10, 20 roles of W Bank, only which is related to the case study. In this case, it is about loans. So you have to talk that World Bank provide loans, often direct to governments on a commercial basis, right? On what basis? Not for entertainment purpose, commercial basis for capital projects. You have to mention about all this. Word by word is important. It is not just for any purpose, right? It cannot be for your short-term investment or something. Just say for 1 year or 6 months you are needing. For 6 months investment, you are not going to the World Bank. You don't require World Bank. You can take a normal loan, bank loan. So you have to mention all this, that it is loan which is direct to government on a commercial basis for capital projects. Now, loans are generally for a long-term period. Loans are generally for a long-term period, which may suit the Nasman government. So from here to here, you're linking to the Nasman government because loan is for long-term. Even Nasman wants a long-term loan only. So it suits the need of the government. Nasman government suits the role of the World Bank. However, the term of the loan may be on areas, not just the finance cost, but the other conditions imposed on the scope of the project. It is not just the term of the loan which is important. There may be other terms and conditions which will be imposed by the World Bank for that project, for which Naswan government wants to take loan. Come into the second paragraph. Okay. Given the circumstances of the investment, now directly you are going to this investment. Directly you are referring to this current investment only. World Bank part is over. You discuss the role of the World Bank and what is needed by the Naswan. NASWA may be able to obtain assistance. You are talking about the possibility, remember. So you are saying here, NASWA may be able to obtain assistance from International Development Association. See how they are referring to it, how they are making it in the points. NASWA may be able to obtain assistance from the international, may be able to obtain assistance from the International Development Association, which is part of the World Bank. What is it? If you haven't read anything about International Development Association, you will panic in the exam. And this is what happened with most of the candidates. When you don't read about something, when you know about something, whether right or wrong, you will be able to answer something. You usually will not panic. The problem comes when you haven't read anything about it and it appears on the day of your exam. Then you go in that panic mode and then you have nothing to write on it, which means no marks, which is the worst situation, I would say. Even worse than giving wrong answers. The reason is, if you know something, you can give something, at least you can get 1 mark out of that four. At least 2 marks, if not full, but at least maybe 1 mark, maybe 2 marks. You never know it, whatever your points might come correct because you know something about it. But if you don't know nothing, you will not answer anything, you're getting 0 marks. You're not writing at all. Let's say you are leaving that question. So this should never be your situation, right? I know the syllabus is lengthy, so much of technical issues and all you might forget also, but at least read on it. Read on this technical parts, all this theories and all. It's very boring to read theories, I know. Trust me, but you have to read at least once so that when you come through a question like this, at least you know that you have read something about it and you know something about it to write on it rather than leaving it unattempted, right? Leaving it blank. So, because very few will know that this is a part of World Bank if you haven't read anything about International Development Association. Okay, so this, what does they do? This provides loan to on more generous terms to the poorest countries. Okay, this provides loans on, right? This one sentence is not even right. When you talked about international develop that they may obtain assistance, you need to say also what does they do. They provide loans on more generous terms to the poorest countries. Now, linking it to the case study back. However, it is designed for countries with very high credit risk, which would struggle to obtain funding by other means, and NASWA may not be eligible. See how they are ending it, how they are concluding. However, these are the words, keywords, connecting words, I would say. Whenever from advantage or whenever from something you have to talk, which is not in the favor or which is a negative, whenever you have to say something negative, there is a way of saying there's a tone. Use however, but these are the words when you have to start from positive to negative. Know these words. However, but in this case, it is not possible because, or in this case, NASFA is not eligible because. So you can write, there are many ways of writing this sentence. Now it is up to you how you want to write it. It should not be exactly copy paste or same thing, whatever you read your answers, because there are many ways of answering a point. Okay, so however, it is designed for countries very high credit risk who struggle to obtain funding by other means, and NASWA may not be eligible. May not be eligible because NASWA is not the poorest country. Based on the case study, we can see because the government is promoting what sustainable investment. Which poor country, in which poor country, government will support sustainable investment, right? For government to promote or support sustainable investment, the country has to be up to some financial status. It cannot be the poorest country because poorest country, what their main aim will be for them to survive. They are taking loans for them to survive so that they get food, they get their basic necessities, not for sustainable development. To come to sustainable development, the country has to be at a growth stage. Not the poorest country cannot afford it. So looking at those case study facts, this is how you have to analyze, right? That's why they are saying based on this, NASWA may not be eligible because nowhere in the case study they told that the company is very poor or finance or struggling, you know. So this International Development Association, they provide funds for the countries who has very high credit risk and who struggle to obtain funding by other means. That means they are not getting finance from any other ways. Their only hope is International Development Association. They can only get funds from there. In those conditions only, International Development Association will give them loan. Not in the case of Nazwa. Let's see how it is marked. So role of World Bank, 1 mark. Usefulness of World Bank as a source of finance, another 1 mark. Role of IDA, 1 mark. Usefulness of IDA as a source of finance, 1 mark. You have to know how you are getting those marked, how you are picking up those marks. If you don't know, you will not know also what you are writing, in what direction you are writing, will it make sense or not, because you keep on writing in one way. Maybe you're writing on one point, but actually there is no mark for that. So always make sure that you refer to the mark scheme and see. So that's it for this video, right? Soon I'll be coming with question 20. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure that you subscribe and hit that bell icon also, so that you receive the notification of my latest videos as soon as I upload them. Thank you and take care.